Think of climbing this massive, really grueling mountain. You spend days, maybe weeks, just hauling yourself up the rock face, enduring freezing winds.
Right. You're completely focused on just survival and reaching the summit.
Exactly. And then finally, you crest the peak. You're exhausted but victorious. You sit down, unpack a meal, and just look at the view.
The ultimate reward for all that struggle.
Yeah, but according to the philosophy we're exploring today, the moment you sit down, the moment you actually get comfortable enough to enjoy your success, the mountain itself starts to slowly collapse underneath you.
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly.
Right. That trap is the core focus of our deep dive today. We are unpacking a really intriguing historical and philosophical text by Zhu Feng titled 36 8 Arrays, the Array of Indulgence.
And it is a text that forces a pretty uncompromising look in the mirror regarding human nature, the whole architecture of success, and the hidden mechanics of failure.
Yeah, we are examining a cyclical trap that the author claims a staggering 98% of humanity falls right into. 98%.
I mean, that's almost everyone.
Basically, everyone. The premise we are presenting to you today proposes that humans are highly capable of striving, of working hard, and doing these incredible things.
But only when they are poor and humble.
Right. The flip side is that humans are most likely to fall into corruption, decay, and just ruin the moment they become rich and noble. You strive when you have nothing, and you rot when you have everything.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp how this cycle works, we need to look at the psychological breakdown the author lays out.
Yeah, we really do.
It seems like the text is arguing that success actually lowers our psychological immune system. Like it makes us vulnerable.
That's a good way to put it. The author frames human nature as operating on a very fragile internal equilibrium. The mechanism of this trap, which the text calls the indulgence array, functions entirely on complacency.
And when the text uses the term array, it's kind of implying a structural, almost mathematical trap.
Right.
Exactly. Think of it as a closed system where certain inputs guarantee specific destructive outputs. The author posits that even a little gain immediately inputs arrogance into the system.
Wow. Just a little gain.
Just a little.
Yeah.
A little comfort instantly shuts down the drive to strive. A little accumulation breeds corruption. And, getting praise or admiration from the people around us simply causes us to lose our direction entirely.
It's so harsh. The text has a very specific quote that summarizes this systemic failure. It says, "It is easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality."
Which really highlights the one-way nature of this psychological decay. I mean, you can slide easily into comfort.
Oh, for sure.
But climbing back out requires this monumental exertion of will that the comfort itself has already eroded.
Bringing this down to a structural level, it reminds me of watching a scrappy, innovative startup. A small team works out of a garage, writing brilliant code because their survival depends on it.
They're hungry.
They are so hungry. Then they get a massive Series A funding round. Suddenly they move into this gorgeous office, they buy expensive ergonomic chairs, they install a kombucha tap on the wall.
And within a year, the engineers are spending more time arguing over the amenities than they are shipping new products.
Yes. The original drive just dies because the environment softened. But I have to push back on the source text here just a little bit.
Go for it.
Wait, isn't the whole point of striving to eventually enjoy the comfort of success? Why is the text framing comfort itself as an inescapable trap rather than just, the logical reward for all that hard work?
Well, we are definitely conditioned to view comfort as the finish line. However, the author's synthesis is that human nature is fundamentally narrow-minded and, as the text describes it, base.
That's base, yeah.
The mathematical trap of the array means that the moment you enter a phase of material comfort, you don't just hit pause on your progress. You inadvertently trigger a gravitational pullback to poverty and lowliness.
Well, this is not a plateau, it's a cliff.
Exactly. The comfort isn't a reward. It is a corrosive agent. It actively eats away at the resilience, the focus, and the humility that generated the success in the first place.
Okay, so if a startup's culture fails because of collective complacency, what happens when the people failing are the ones actually running the world?
That's where things get really dangerous.
Right, because the text argues that this individual psychological trap is essentially a fractal. It scales up massively to destroy entire organizations, historical movements, and even civilizations.
And the author provides numerous examples across culture and history to map out this fractal effect. It proves that the indulgence array is a chronic human condition, not just an isolated thing.
Yeah, the text touches on some famous cultural touchstones to me at this point. Like, it mentions Zhu Yu from the Three Kingdoms period trying to lure Liu Bei into a trap using the luxurious life of Eastern Wu.
Right, a classic example.
And the only reason Liu Bei escaped that specific indulgence array was because his brilliant strategist, Zhu Giliang, actively kept his focus sharp.
Kept him away from the comforts being offered.
Exactly. It also brings up the Tang monk in the classic story Journey to the West, pointing out that without his absolute unwavering ironclad will to resist comfort at every single step, he never would have reached the holy mountain to get the Buddhist scriptures.
Those literary examples really set the stage. They show the conscious effort required to resist the trap. But the text's primary, most detailed historical case study explores what happens when an entire society fails to resist.
And we're talking about Rome here. Right?
Yes, the author uses the fall of the ancient Roman Empire as the ultimate macro-level manifestation of the indulgence array. The catalyst for this collapse, according to the source, was an internal rot caused by comfort way before external barbarian invasions became the fatal blow.
And the trigger for that rot was basically the outsourcing of their own struggle. Once the Roman elite utilized slaves to take over all their physical labor, they were entirely liberated from hardship.
Deprived of that friction, the elites stopped acting as visionary philosopher kings.
They just got lazy.
Completely. Instead of using their newly free time to ponder the historical prospects of their republic or, innovate their society, they became entirely engrossed in wealth and power struggles. What's fascinating here is a specific metaphor the text uses to describe this phenomenon.
Oh, this part is so vivid.
It states that because of their luxurious lifestyles, the rich became like moldy pockets that have worn out and can no longer hold wisdom, frankness, and loyalty.
Moldy pockets. That imagery perfectly illustrates the mechanics of the decay. The fabric of their character literally rots away.
They just can't hold on to values anymore.
Because the structural integrity of their minds has been compromised by extravagance. And the text gets incredibly specific about how this decay infiltrated their institutions. Like, it details how the Roman Senate became flooded with what they called new people.
Right, these were aristocrats who were essentially acting as both government officials and businessmen simultaneously.
Which totally commercialized political power.
Absolutely. When lawmakers are primarily driven by market accumulation and personal indulgence, the legal system no longer functions to protect the state or its citizens.
It just functions to protect and expand their monopolies.
It is a complete systemic failure driven by a desire for endless material accumulation.
And that institutional decay was mirrored by this bizarre physical gluttony in their everyday lives.
Oh, the banquets.
Yeah, the text quotes Columella, a Roman writer, describing the excessive banquets of the elite. I mean, they would eat until they suffered from terrible indigestion.
Which sounds awful.
But instead of letting natural satiety stop them, they sought artificial solutions to their unnatural excesses. They would actually go into steam baths, specifically to sweat profusely, forcing their bodies to eliminate the indigestion rapidly.
Just so they bypassed their biological limits, they just wanted to feel artificially hungry and thirsty again, allowing them to return to the banquet and consume even more.
It's mind-blowing.
It perfectly encapsulates the array. The system is no longer about nourishment. It is an endless loop of consumption just for the sake of indulgence.
And it wasn't just the physical feasting. It was a broader societal shift toward complete unproductivity. The data the text provides on the inflation of Roman holidays illustrates this brilliantly.
The holiday inflation is wild.
During the time of Augustus, the calendar had 66 holidays.
Which is already a lot.
Right. Under Tiberius, that number crept up to 87 days. And by the mid-4th century, it exploded to a massive 175 days of holidays a year.
By inflating holidays to nearly half the year, the Romans fundamentally shifted their civilization's economy from production to consumption. The state was forced to constantly extract resources just to fund the distraction and indulgence of its own people.
It's a house of cards.
Completely. This excessive extravagance in material life consumes finite resources, it poisons social customs, and fundamentally bankrupts the ruling class.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The text bridges this ancient history to a completely different era, analyzing the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom movement that occurred in China about 160 years ago.
A huge historical leap.
Massive leap. The text argues that despite the massive differences in time, culture, and geography, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom collapsed under the exact same mathematical trap as Rome.
The exact same one.
The leaders of the movement started with immense struggle and discipline, but once they achieved a level of success, they immediately fell victim to the indulgence array.
The author describes this excessive extravagance as pulling the firewood from under the pot for civilization.
That's a great analogy.
It is. If we look at the mechanics of it, civilization is the pot cooking the meal. The fire required to cook that meal needs fuel, and that fuel is struggle, diligence, and visionary effort.
So indulgence is the act of pulling that fuel away.
Exactly. The heat dissipates, the water stops boiling, and the civilization goes cold.
So if empires that span continents and these massive historical movements are continuously destroyed by this fractal psychological trap, we have to ask, is there a way out?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, is humanity just doomed to constantly build things up, only to watch them rot from our own comfort? This question leads us directly into the author's specific, modern application of these ideas, focusing on a community called Lifechanyuan and their mission to build a secluded utopia known as the second home.
The author pivots from historical diagnosis to prescribing a very specific utopian antidote. However, the architecture of this utopia operates on a profound paradox.
Okay, what kind of paradox?
Well, the text issues a strict directive to the members of Lifechanyuan. It says the more superior the environment they build and the more beautiful and comfortable their second home becomes, the more diligent, thrifty, modest, and cautious they must individually be.
And this is where I have to ask on behalf of you listening, how did that practically function? I mean, if a community goes through the immense effort to build a literal paradise on Earth, but the members are mandated to remain thrifty and cautious, how do they avoid a revolt?
It sounds impossible on paper.
Right. How do you live in a utopia without actually enjoying the material benefits of that utopia?
The text's solution relies on dividing how human beings experience and process joy. The author mandates that spiritual and mental enjoyment should be maximized within this community. You should be intellectually fulfilled to the absolute highest degree.
Okay.
However, material enjoyment must be strictly limited. To address the potential for revolt, the text explicitly states that this material limitation cannot be enforced by external rules or punitive regulations.
It has to be an internal voluntary discipline. Like if someone has to force you to not be extravagant, you have already triggered the trap.
Exactly. The utopia must be maintained by the members voluntarily adhering to the values of Lifechanyuan. They must actively put effort into building what the text calls their soul garden, while simultaneously improving their non-material structure.
Let's break those concepts down, because that is some heavy philosophical terminology. When the text says non-material structure, it essentially means your psychological and spiritual immune system.
That's a perfect translation of the concept.
It is your inner life, your values, your resilience, your curiosity, and your emotional regulation, as opposed to your material bank account or the physical luxuries you possess.
And cultivating that soul garden requires constant, deliberate practice. The tension between having luxury available and voluntarily choosing frugality is the exact psychological workout needed to keep that non-material structure healthy.
It's like resistance training for the soul.
Exactly. This is why the text gets incredibly granular about the everyday behaviors that threaten the utopia. We aren't just talking about the grand excesses of Roman steam baths here.
No, the author points to very mundane, seemingly minor pitfalls. The text argues that if a member starts becoming petty about the food they eat, or selective about where they are housed, or even just wasteful with their clothing, that is the rot setting in.
The mechanism of decay is triggered by everyday entitlement. The text lists other specific violations too. Being extravagant in how one travels or communicates, being lazy or sloppy in daily work, or the ultimate disruption of the community's equilibrium, taking more from the home than one actually contributes to it.
The text even specifically notes that focusing on promiscuous freedom in love and sex, rather than focusing on improving that inner, non-material structure, is a fast track to decadence.
It's all connected in this philosophy.
It is fascinating to see how it scales. To the author, a Roman senator corrupting the legal system for wealth and a utopian community member complaining about the dinner menu are expressing the exact same symptom of the exact same disease.
Because both are elevating material preference over spiritual discipline. The stakes for this community, according to the source text, are existential.
Like life or death for the community.
Absolutely. If they fail to escape the indulgence array, the author warns that their beautiful utopia will simply be short-lived. It will fade away, throwing humanity right back into the endless historical cycle of poverty, struggle, wealth, and corruption.
Furthermore, The text states that failing to escape this array means failing their ultimate religious or philosophical ideal, which is described as going to heaven.
It's a high-stakes game.
Very high stakes. The prescribed escape hatch from this endless loop relies on that internal soul garden and a strict adherence to a framework of principles they call the 800 values for New Era human. Now, obviously, we are presenting these specific beliefs impartially to explore the philosophy laid out in the source material.
Right, just looking at the framework.
But the underlying psychology about how comfort breeds decay is incredibly thought-provoking for literally any aspect of life.
It demands a complete reevaluation of what we consider the finish line in our endeavors. The framework forces us to realize that the moment we stop struggling, we basically begin decaying.
So what does this all mean? When we boil down the historical deep dives, the moldy pockets of Roman elites, the failed revolutions, and the strict rule books of modern utopias, what is the core message for you listening right now?
It's a universal lesson.
It really is. Whether you are analyzing the fall of an ancient empire, trying to diagnose why a scrappy startup completely lost its edge after securing funding, or simply looking at your own personal goals and daily habits, the indulgence array teaches a harsh, uncompromising lesson. Success is often exponentially more dangerous than the struggle it took to achieve it.
Because struggle forces focus, innovation, and an acute awareness of reality. Comfort, on the other hand, if left structurally unchecked, invites complacency, entitlement, and rot.
The moment we feel we have safely arrived, we are most at risk of losing the very qualities that got us there.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly uncomfortable thought to chew on.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
If human nature is genuinely hardwired to strive in hardship and rot in luxury, as this text argues, is it possible for us to artificially manufacture hardship or hunger in our own lives once we have reached our goals?
Wow, manufacture hardship.
Yeah. When you finally climb that mountain and sit down to enjoy the view, how do you convince your brain that you are still climbing? How do we keep our minds sharp, stay modest, and make absolutely sure that we keep the mold out of our own pockets?
Something to carefully consider the next time you find yourself getting just a little too comfortable. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay hungry, and we will catch you next time.